Well, there's Mama Cat again, stopping me. She's asleep. Right, we gotta get rid of Mama Cat. Because Mama Cat. Alright, go on, Mama Cat. Thank you. Get over and get your pounce. It's in your bowl. It's ready for you. Alright. Now, I got dogs down here. I'm going to try to work on one of these right here. It's probably that one. Right there. Alright, let's go through. I remember making one of these. And I think it was this one right here that I made. And I still got it. Alright, now these in here, I know I'm not going to want them.
And I had a few things I wanted to add after this section that I've learned, over the last few years, and I just thought it was so interesting. So we're going to play that.
A little green button there.
What's that?
A little green button on his chest.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, the little green button. It looks like it's almost a beetle of sorts, too. It's very interesting. So here we go.
This is the Theological Dictionary of the Old Testament, and we're going to read in here about the rituals from the Sumerian rituals from Ugarit, and reading a little bit here about the word Rephaim. It says,
all right, this will be a good time for me to make a pattern to go into that pattern and keep it with it, and I can find a pattern that goes back to this one if I can find it. So what we're going to do, we'll turn that on, and then that way, so we can most indefinitely, let's see, how much am I going to need? Alright, what we're going to do is we're going to take it in half down that way.
That they had in these Rephaim texts from the Ugaritic or the Sumerian text, it says they had the capacity as heroic healers and bestowers of fertility. And we're talking about these dead that had passed on. And the root, and of course the Rephaim, the root, there was the ministry called Rapha. And that word means to heal. Yeah. And these dead, these people in the heart of the earth, they were seen as people in these Sumerian texts as people that could heal and also transmit fertility to people. And it says here in the Ugaritic rituals, we have a description of a ritual or a collection of ritual invocations in which the deceased departed members of the Ugaritic royal house are invoked and are offered sacrifice. And there were actually days and times with them in the rituals. Well, is this all just fantasy and myth? Well, I think it might be a little bit more than that. It also goes on to say, on the evidence of the so-called Rephaim text, speaking of those from Ugarit.
All right. Now I can put this one up where it belongs, if I can find it. I think that's going to take about a day to find where it belongs. And we're going to use this one right here to make sure everything's kosher with it. Okay, here is the pattern skirt, and I'm not going to use it because it is not big enough to work on. Look at this. What What are you doing, Mama Cat? You're getting on my pattern. You're off of these. I'm gonna go ahead and put them over here. What? What? You laying down on my pattern? All right, I gotta find another pattern. She can sleep on it till I find one. All right, I'm gonna try to take one of these. And it's probably, hopefully, it'll be that one. What one is that one? B, and see if that won't work for what we want. And I hope it does.
Which, when reconstructed, it is quite likely that the Rephaim were associated with the nurturing of the dead with fertility. These rituals of the Rephaim text from Ugaritic, to give the people after they died energy and fertility. This was the exact purpose of the ritual of the opening of the mouth as we see it. And it says in this one ritual, the Rephaim travel in horse-drawn chariots, and on the third day they reach the threshing floors and plantations to partake in a festal banquet. And you know how much of this actually became a reality? We can't say, but we can sure say that this is exactly what these people were trying to do. Another very scholarly source, this is the Dictionary of the Old Testament Theology and Exegesis, edited by Van Gimmeren, and it also speaks of the text in the Ugarit Rephaim text, and it says, the Rephaim may come up from the netherworld on occasion as in a New Year festival, and the living ruler may be counted among them. So they actually believed that, and they claimed that they were able to bring these people up and actually have fellowship and eat with them. It says, through death, they have taken on special powers, preeminently healing and fertilization. They are healed through death. They are devotees of the god Rephu. And this is what we're talking about. We're talking about the control and the energizing of the soul after death, not a purely human soul, though. That wouldn't work. But a soul that has been corrupted through genetic corruption to where it no longer has part in the resurrection.
Very interesting. And man, I'll tell you, like, after what we kind of talked about over the last few things, I wanted to bring up a little bit about that area. You're talking about the Ugaritic text, and you're talking about that whole area, Byblos, all of that, and that just led me to remind me about Aga Bashan. And we did a show not too long ago about Aga Bashan. Actually, it was about the tribe of Dan and how I believe they went there, found the secrets that were available also to Egypt, available to the other lands that were around there. And so I just want to read this real quick and just kind of tie this in a little bit. So we're looking at Deuteronomy 3:11 and 13. It says, "For only Og of Bashan remained of the remnant of the giants. Behold, his bedstead was a bedstead of iron." And you go on to talk about, we're going to talk about Bashan, but at the very last verse here, it says, "And the rest of Gilead and all Bashan, being the kingdom of Og, gave I unto the half tribe of Manasseh, all the regions of Argob, with all Bashan, which was called the land of the giants." So this land extended. This was Mount Hermon. This is where we get modern day Syria. This is where the heart of civilization was. This is where the capital of Phoenicia was. This is where the trading section was. This is where the heart of the world was at one time. So just to kind of give you guys an idea, I don't have a map in front of me, but if you look at that, at the very end of that map, at the very end of the ocean, you have the Strait of Gibraltar going in right around Spain and Africa, and they had the Pillars of Hercules set there. But if you went back into the ocean, you get all the way back into the end, and you have this major trading point. Now let's look a little bit about Og of Bashan. So this is Bashan, the strong number for Bashan, and this is, this comes from an unused word according to the Hebrew. So this is not an original Hebrew word, but it is a Ugaritic word. And so if you look at the Ugaritic text, and it says the name Bashan likely derives from the Proto-Semitic root. One meaning of this root found in the Ugaritic term is serpent or dragon. mentioned in several mythological texts. So we have this tied in together. Joshua 12, it says, "And the coast of Og, king of Bashan, which was of the remnant of the giants that dwelt at Ashtaroth and Edrei, and reigned in Mount Hermon, and in Salcah, and in Bashan, unto the borders of the Geshurites, and the Maccathites, and half Gilead, and the border of the Sihon king Heshbon." Now Og himself was the king of the Rephaim. And like David had said when he was reading that about the Rephaim were basically either reanimated giants or healer giants of some sort that were in that area. And so this was, I believe, this was the heart of this. Og was considered the king of the dead at the time. He was the king of the dead, and there's so much stuff in the Ugaritic text about Rephaim. You'll find it on gravestones, all of these different things. But I believe that the heart of genetic breeding, the heart of Bel, this is where we have Belbek. This is where it all started with Og. Og was the last of the king of the dead, and he was the ones that Joshua killed. And there was something going on with Og, and I explained it. I think that in order for you to get the full grasp, you'll probably need to go back and watch about the tribe of Dan. But I believe that these secrets were found here. It talks about Dan bringing their gods with them, bringing these things, and I believe this is the heart of these mystery religions, is where a lot of this stuff came from, and I find it hard not to tie that in.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Are you going to talk about Job 26:5?
No, go ahead.
All right, I'm going to throw that in here.
Go for it.
Now, Job 26:5, it says, "Dead things are formed from under the waters, and the inhabitants thereof." Now, that word "dead" there is the word Rephaim. Now, if you look that word "formed" up in the Hebrew, and what it will tell you is that it means to twist or whirl. And many times we've talked about Elijah was taken up in a whirlwind. There were these whirlwinds and these spirals. They're gates and they're portals, and literally these dead things. And somehow the only way I can make any sense of this is that it's speaking of the Rephaim that were killed in the flood of Noah, and somehow these dead things were formed under the waters. So through some kind of dark workings, they were able to reanimate them. Maybe that's why David cut Goliath's head off.
Yeah.
But the DNA strand, if you look at a DNA strand, and that's literally what this word "form" means. It means to twist or swirl in a spiral. And literally, could it be possible that by twisting the person's DNA strand, portals within us could be opened up that could be accessed by these entities? You have to admit it's at least theoretically possible, and I think it's spiritually certain.
Yeah, man, it's crazy the kind of stuff that you can really find, the tie-ins that you can see in all of this. But I remember when researching this, seeing the bedstead of iron, and realizing too that Bashan is now considered called Gilead. And I don't know how many people saw the Handmaid's Tale. The epicenter of this breeding center that they were using was called Gilead. And it's just amazing to me, because the whole point of the kings of the world and the people who claim to be of this Grail bloodline, which kind of ties into what we're talking about, but the green jewel being involved in the process of the Grail, which the Grail to a lot of people means it ties in exactly with bloodline. It has nothing to do with an actual cup, but a bloodline. And then there's the people that believe the cup. But the fact that these people claim, the original kings, the Fisher Kings, who claim to have come from these fishmen that came out of the water, like David was saying, these Rephaim that came out of the water and taught men civilization, they claim to be of this lineage until this day. So there's a lot there that needs to be unpacked. But man, it all makes so much sense together when you just start looking at it and see that not only was this an ancient thing, but this is something that's been carried down, and this is something that I think is going to be released and unleashed on the entire population of the world to come.
Well, just think about this for just a moment. If we're talking about thousands and thousands of years BC, that they were able to do this what could they do now with the tremendous the things they've looked in with transhumanism? I think that absolutely people know how to do this now, and that they're intentionally doing it. And this picture makes me think. Did you ever see a picture of a zombie that didn't have its mouth open? I mean, always the zombie's got its mouth open and it's doing the thing, always got their mouth open. They're the people with the open mouths. They're the zombies.
That's for sure. Now, this next part, David, you talk about the passengers, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that. This is interesting.
From Ezekiel chapter 39. And John, will you read this text for us, verses 11 through 15?
Sure. And it shall come to pass in that day that I will give unto Gog a place there of graves in Israel, the valley of the passengers on the east of the sea. And it shall stop the noses of the passengers, and there shall they bury Gog and all his multitude, and they shall call it the valley of Hamon-Gog. And 7 months shall the house of Israel be burying of them, that they may cleanse the land. Yea, all the people of the land shall bury them, and it shall be to them a renown the day that I shall be glorified, saith the Lord God. And they shall sever out men of continual employment, passing through the land, to bury with the passengers those that remain upon the face of the earth, to cleanse it. After the end of the 7 months shall they search, and the passengers that pass through the land, when any seeth a man's bone, then shall he set up a sign by it, till the buriers have buried it in the valley of Hamon-Gog.
Thank you, John. And just on the surface of this text, we have something here that has been a great destruction, and there are a multitude of bodies that have to be buried. And of course, our mind would think of perhaps a nuclear incident that would cause radiation pollution. But what if it was a biological incident, to where these people had died of some kind of a plague, and only the people that had been protected from this plague were able to go out and do this work? And the text speaks of the passengers and other protected humans that work together in burying the dead. Now, let's look at this word passenger. And this word passenger, and I'm going to look again, this is the Theological Dictionary of the Old Testament. And for scholarly research into the Hebrew, this is the top of the food chain. You don't go over the head of this set. And this is what it says here about the word passenger. And what this word means, it means to go, come over, or beyond something or someone. It means to go over or to cross over. A bar means to go over. And where are these passengers? Where have they crossed over from? And on a previous Midnight Ride, we put forth the idea that these were people that had crossed over from the realm of death into the living, that these passengers are the same people that we're talking about in these other texts, in the Egyptian rituals in the pyramid, and also in the Rephaim text from the Ugarit. Now, let's look at some more things, and just file this under the category of you can't make this stuff up. And it talks about the root word of this as it was used by the Egyptians. It says that it is frequently attested in royal tombs beginning with the pyramid text. We're talking about the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It says most of the occurrences are found in the so-called books of the underworld, mortuary literature, Amduat, the Book of Gates. Now listen to this. This is just unbelievable. And it says in this ritual, it says, when the light of the shining sun reaches the rigid mummies in their crypts, they are awakened and filled with breath. It is absolutely amazing. You see the mummy movies we see, this is absolutely the purpose of mummification. These are elaborate rituals that at some point in time they were to be reanimated, to cross over from the realm of the dead to the living. It goes on, this is amazing, but there is a specific manuscript here that uses this Hebrew word. It's identified as KI1, an Egyptian fragment, not of a biblical text, but of a writing. It says that literally it means bring over, in the sense of lead, guide a corpse over. This is specifically what we're talking about. We're talking about the bringing people back over. And here we see in Ezekiel these abar, these passengers, literally people that have been reanimated from the dead, and they are there with certain humans that have done something to where they're immune to this also, and they're engaged in the bearing of these bodies. So we get a picture here of Satan's plan for the final satanic evolution of the human race through genetic corruption. And this is a commentary by Daniel Block. This is a very commentary of very high scholastic level. He looked at the same material that I have just presented to you in the most in-depth theological dictionaries that really trace how this word was used. And this is the conclusion this guy come to. I love it. And he cites the very same text. He says, with the support from the Ugaritic text, KTU, however, it seems best to treat the Haborim, or the word translated passengers in the King James Bible, as a designation for those who have passed on, that is, deceased heroes referred to elsewhere as the Rephaim. Cha-ching. I love it. The exact same conclusion. That's what we're talking about. And he goes on farther in this text to connect it with the very same place we're talking about, the very same place in Enoch 53:1, where he saw the vision in the valley of the people with the open mouths. It says this site will receive a new name, Gi Hamon Gog, the valley of Hamon Gog, which is a play on Gi Hinnom, the valley of Hinnom. Earlier, this was the site of Molech worship and child sacrifice. So in Ezekiel 39, where we see the passengers and these other humans bearing the dead, this is the exact same place where we started out in Enoch 53:1, the valley of people with open mouths. That is not a coinky-dink.
Interesting, man. I remember when you brought this out, this was so interesting to me, because this is some verse that I feel like I've glossed over, I don't know, hundreds of times. And just, you see a word like that and you don't think much of it, to because we use that kind of word in English all the time. But when you look at that root of that word, it really brings out the story, doesn't it?
Oh boy. Yeah.
Amazing.
From his
Really interesting. So I wanted to read another verse that is the thing that we can look forward to ourselves. So, the evil side has zombie apocalypse to look forward to, and the open mouths and the creepy mess like that. But we have something to look forward to as well, which I think is really an amazing parallel to this, but in a positive way. And so I want to read this to you guys as well. In Ezekiel 37, Ezekiel, and this is like right before the other vision he has. This is right around that same passage in Ezekiel. But he has another vision of another group of people rising up out of the ground, because he prophesies to these people. In Ezekiel 37, and starting in verse 1, and I'm going to read all the way to 14, and because this is such a really amazing blessing, and it shows us that it will reanimate us as well. And we don't have to take whatever the world is throwing at us to do this, we don't have to take that. Because the world will offer an alternative to God. You know, the hope of every man is to be able to live forever. The hope of every woman is to be able to live forever, to not see their loved ones die. One of the worst things about the life that we live in this world is the fact that we have to bury those of us that we love, other people that we love. And this is a hard thing to deal with, but God made a promise. And he promised not only to these people here, but he's a promise to us as well. And I want to read this. It says, "The hand of the Lord was upon me, and carried me out in the spirit of the Lord, set me down in the midst of the valley which was full of bones, and caused me to pass by them round about. And behold, there was a very many in the open valley, and lo, they were very dry. And he said unto me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I answered, O Lord God, thou knowest. And he said unto me, Prophesy upon these bones, and say unto them, O ye dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord God unto these bones, Behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and ye shall live. And I will lay sinews upon you, and will bring upon flesh upon you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and you shall live, and you shall know that I am the Lord. So I prophesied as I..."
Well, I didn't know this. They changed where my PayPal is. So here we go. We want to go right here. Still yet right there. Alright, and then if you look right here is PayPal. I think it's crazy the way that they did not say, you know, they just do things. But there it is.